Disappointing year one for Kalen DeBoer. I feel like that's fair to say. They went 9-4, losing their bowl game to cap off the season to Michigan. Lost to Vandy, stuff like that. Not entirely what they had in mind, but it's still year two for them. They have a loaded roster. Their win total sitting at 9.5. They brought a ton of guys back. Multiple people that felt like they could have left and gone to the draft came back. It feels like they have something to prove in their eyes. And the biggest transition piece among all the returners is Jalen Milroe left and went pro. He's now a Seattle Seahawk. And Ty Simpson will be the new starting quarterback. Former 5-star. Has been there for multiple years. Has really sat and waited his turn. But I'm high on him. JP, what are your thoughts on Ty Simpson?
I think he's solid. I enjoyed watching him and watching he has a very little tape right now, collegiate snaps at least. His passing ability, especially 20 yards and in, is really, really good. There's a really tight spiral, but you kind of expect that out of a 5-star. He has that arm capability. Not a really strong arm, and I think the big thing that people will notice this year that they would be surprised by is he uses his legs way more than I think anyone really knows. He's a willing runner, and he's willing to run people over as well. He's very comfortable in doing that. I would be interested to see how much DeBoer uses that for this Alabama offense, but I think he's good enough to run the show, but arguably the other two guys in-house are as well.
Sure.
With Keelan Russell and Austin Mack. I think Austin Mack would have been my pick to be the starter out of the guys that right now. And they're in a similar spot, kind of how I said with Ohio State, that like if Ty Simpson, no different to how it went a year ago or 2 years ago with Nick Saban, like if he plays bad, they could just replace him with Keelan Russell or Austin Mack like they did with Jalen Milroe. He's not good enough to be the starter after one really, really bad game early on in the season. So he's got to play well, especially in this opener against Florida State, for the job to be his, I think.
Sure. Yeah, it helps. He's surrounded by good weapons. We heard all about Ryan Williams only being 17 last year.
Yep.
He is now 18, but he's going into his true sophomore year after a really good freshman campaign. Their wide receiver, too, Jeremy Bernard's also back, a former Washington guy who's very talented. So we'll be able to throw to both of them. I will say they're starting running back. We found out a day or two ago, and Jam Miller is hurt, and they're hoping he'll be back late September for the Georgia game.
Yeah, they're thinking league play.
Yeah.
That would be the first SEC game. So
that is something to keep an eye on. I don't know who the running back 2 is off the top of my head.
I was actually looking.
Yeah, pull it up. I think they could get through those first couple games without Jam Miller. They have a pretty good, running back factory down there. Their running back 2 last year is now at Michigan. But I'm sure they have, a former 4-star, 5-star waiting in the wings.
Richard Young, and then they also have Daniel Hill.
Okay, yep.
Which Daniel Hill was the guy who was supposed to come here to state, no?
No, that's Ackland Deer, A.K. Deer.
Okay.
Never heard of Ackland Deer or whatever his name is.
He's a 4 or 5-star running back who
He's basically picking between us and Bama, no?
Yeah, I think he just finished his freshman year, but I could be wrong. I'm not positive. I feel like
he's a true freshman.
He's going into his true freshman year?
Let me double check on Daniel Hill, though.
I mean, like you said, it doesn't, even if they lose a guy, they're still running out of 4 or 5-star guy. So
he's a guy they'll want back for the meat of the SEC play, but if it sounds like he's going to be back for that, then it shouldn't be a huge issue. It's just something to keep an eye on. Where I really think they're stacked, though, is defensively. They have guys at all 3 levels. LT Overton, former Aggie, is in his second year in the program. At edge, Deontay Lawson at linebacker. Keon Sabb, former Michigan Wolverine, for my boy Cromie. He's in the secondary at safety, among other guys. It's a very, very talented group. I think they'll have a top 5 defense in the country. It's kind of that's not really bold to say because of all the talent, but they were not that last year, especially in their losses. They really struggled to stop the runs. I mean, they gave 257 rushing yards to Oklahoma and over 214 to Tennessee. And then in the Vandy game, it kind of felt like whenever Vandy needed a big third down conversion, Pavia could get it with his legs, or one of their running backs could get it with their legs. So that'll be something they have to shore up. But, I think they'll be able to do it. But, yeah, I'm personally very, very high on this team. I'll go and say it right now. They're my pick to win the national championship. I know that brings you much pain, Sanders.
Yeah.
As a supposed Bama hater, though we have evidence to the contrary.
I deleted the photos, so I don't know if there is any more evidence.
It's in my brain.
Yeah.
It's in my heart. So, do we want to pick the over/under for this team? Any other thoughts?
No, I think we got to get into some of the key points. We
Okay.
haven't even talked
Sure,
about some
sure.
of the important stuff. You've got some important stuff up there. My first question is: are Alabama fans excited Jalen Milroe is gone? And JP, as our QB guru, I want to hear your thoughts on Jalen Milroe. I had him in fantasy last year. He was a fantastic fantasy quarterback, especially because of what he was able to do on the ground. But in 2 of Alabama's losses, he put up kind of doo-doo games. The Tennessee game, I think he had 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and then the Oklahoma game, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And I wonder, are Alabama fans? Because initially I asked Jack, like, do you think Alabama is enjoying addition by subtraction, losing Milroe? And Jack was like, you don't think so? You think that, right?
I mean, I think Alabama fans are happy he's gone.
Right. I wonder if it's a thing, kind of like we talked with Clemson, where they kind of staled on the guy, and they're glad to see some like fresh blood because they knew what they had in him, and they were kind of like tired of the downside that they kept experiencing when you would see his shortcomings as a passer, and then he would have an off day on the ground. What are your thoughts on that, JP?
I mean, I think in-house, maybe, yeah, sure, they're happy he's gone. I know personally 2 very diehard Alabama fans, a la my girlfriend and her parents, and they loved Jalen Milroe. I think the biggest thing for them that the losses, it felt like for them, were not necessarily Jalen Milroe dependent. It was more so they were more keen on the defense and then the offensive line play as well. Milroe was bad in multiple games, especially in the losses, Oklahoma, Tennessee. But I think if you were to be happy that he is gone, then you're going to be kind of kicking yourself later on this season. Because if he was here again, I would pick them to win the national championship. But because he's not here, I don't think they quite have that unless the roster is as good as it's kind of being played out to be, and it plays that way, and DeBoer can show that like he's a winner really regardless of where he is. I would love to have Milroe back over Ty Simpson.
Yeah.
There's a reason Milroe started over Ty Simpson.
Sure.
It's because he's better than Ty Simpson. And I think, yeah, as a Bama fan, if you think Milroe being gone is going to solve anything, no. Not that Alabama is going to be bad. It's more so I think the rest of the team is going to be a lot better this year. I think we're in a second year under Caleb DeBoer. Now these are Kalen's guys. These are not the guys at the end of the Nick Saban run, which was the large part and the reason he retired, because they were, jerks. They wanted money. They wanted playing time, stuff like that. And Saban hated dealing with that at the end. And then now they were like, oh, we stayed at Alabama. We have a new coach. It's not Saban anymore.
Sure.
It's like a substitute teacher we can act out. And Kalen has expressed his difficulties with that in year 1. Now it's his guys. And I think that will be a larger part in the reason that they're better this year than the loss of Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, I do wonder. Tucker makes a great point that bringing in Grubbs, did he come from Washington?
So he was at Washington, and then he came initially with DeBoer and spent like 2 weeks as Alabama's OC, and then left to the Seahawks and called a good offense there. But I guess DeBoer convinced him to come back and help him out.
Yeah.
I do think it's reasonable to say that Ty Simpson will fit the Ryan Grubb offense better as more of a true
100%.
passer. We saw what Michael Penix did in that offense, throwing the football, and it was great. Now, Ty Simpson doesn't have the arm strength that Michael Penix does, so that'll have to be an adjustment there. But I do think a kind of a more pure passer could at least give this team more consistency, even if the highs of Milroe were fantastic. And in theory, Milroe could win you any game. He could stumble and make some mistakes.
Another question I want to pose. Well, let's look at what Sven just said about Milroe in the last 3 games. I don't think he said Oklahoma and Michigan were borderline top 50 teams, maybe is what he's trying to say.
No, he's saying they were 500 as
Oh,
a record.
okay.
But those are great defenses.
Correct. Those were fantastic defenses. Michigan's defense had 2 defensive linemen go in the first round. Oklahoma, their entire thing all season was they had a good defense, and they just couldn't get the offense to work with Jackson Arnold, and wide receivers were hurt all season. Oklahoma had a very good defense last year. I want to talk about Kalen DeBoer. I was looking at it. The dude has only been a head coach for 5 years. 1 at Alabama, 2 at Washington, and 2 at Fresno State.
Yep.
something like that. So he's only been a head coach for 5 years. Was successful in 2 years at Washington with the success over Oregon and Bo Nix, and the constant winning there. But he had Michael Penix the whole time there. So what do we think? Do we think that Kalen DeBoer is a SEC head coach? 100%. I mean, you guys are like, there are people who are also questioning that. I also think he's a very good head coach. I think he will have success at Alabama. But like, do you want to address that and kind of your thoughts, given that he's only been head coach for 5 years and has kind of quickly come up through the ranks? 2 years at Fresno, 2 years at Washington, and now you're at Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things to that is, one, I am a Kalen DeBoer fan just because of my Washington homerism, and I knew A&M didn't have a chance to hire him, but like he was my dream hire for A&M because we were looking for a head coach in the same cycle. He's young. I do think he went through potential some growing pains last year, but I fully trust that he'll figure them out and be all the better for it. And he was kind of a Nick Saban picked guy. Like, Nick Saban's still very involved in the program. I'm sure he was very involved in the coaching hire. And so I have full faith that he can right the ship from a 9-4 season and have them right back in the playoffs and just keep recruiting really well and just put good team after good team on the field.
He was walking into an impossible situation.
Yeah.
Becoming the head coach post the GOAT of college football. And one thing I hate right now is just this misconception of that Alabama was terrible last year. They beat Georgia, the SEC champions. They blew the doors off of LSU in Death Valley and basically emptied the stadium. And this is I don't necessarily understand the hate and that it was a terrible season on DeBoer. I think they're going to be even better this year. But I think he's an SEC coach. He already has a win over Kirby Smart and Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
Not many people have that.
Yeah, not
True.
many people have that at all, especially the win over Kirby Smart. And there were bad games last season, sure, but all three of those games were on the road. And, not losing a game in Tuscaloosa means something. I felt like that was a really important thing for them last season, was not losing those games at home, because Alabama never loses at home. The only time they lose at home is when a freak of nature comes in there. Johnny Manziel, Joe Burrow, Cam Newton.
Yeah.
That's when they lose at home. Quinn Ewers, of course, did it, which
Bo Wallace, was
he's a
he
freak of nature.
Freak of nature is.
It's a freak of nature
No,
game.
I'm
that was a
messing.
freak of
it
nature
was
game.
very much. I'm trolling as an Ole Miss hater.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that was a huge part of the being able to keep the home field advantage and win those games at home, even when some of them were close. Like the South Florida game was closer than it should have been. Obviously, the Georgia game was close at the end there. They had to make a miracle play, but I think he's the SEC coach. He's already in the top 5 of that. Now, is that partially what he has, walked into with the Alabama program? Hell yeah. But I still think he's a winner, and he's an excellent coach, and I think he's going to really flourish as he gets his guys and his system in here at Alabama. I think the biggest thing was just it doesn't feel like he's the SEC coach. It doesn't feel like he should be the coach at Alabama. Like the biggest candidates were, Brian Kelly was Lane Kiffin was a big one.
Yeah.
Dabo Swinney was rumored to go to Alabama as well. Those felt like, okay, this is someone we can replace and say, continue what Nick Saban did.
Sure.
DeBoer is not going to do what Saban did. He's not going to run the program the same way. And so I think that is why that question even comes up from people, is because he is so different than Nick.
For sure. A couple key games on the schedule. Over-under is 9.5 games. They have a very tough schedule. They have to go to Georgia. They've got Vanderbilt at home. I highlighted that. Not necessarily it's a revenge game. So I think people will be watching that game to see how much Alabama wins by. Tennessee at home. That's another revenge game. They lost that last year. They go to South Carolina. That's going to be a really interesting game to watch, because that was a loss for South Carolina, one of the losses for South Carolina that people were comparing back and forth. Oh, should South Carolina be in the playoffs? Should Alabama be in the playoffs? Neither of them made it, so it was irrelevant in the long run. But that's going to be interesting. LSU, always interesting. Alabama-LSU is one of the best rivalries in college football over the past 10 to 15 years. Oklahoma will be interesting. Another revenge game again, and then at Auburn to end the season. So, and then at Florida State to start it. I didn't even hit that. It's a tough schedule. They've only got 3.
I mean, you play 2 out-of-state teams. So, or not out-of-state, sorry, out-of-conference Power 4 teams. Out of state, what the heck?
Who are the... Oh, Florida State and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So that it is a tough schedule. Over/unders 9.5.
I mean, I'll kick it off because I already said I'm picking them to win the national championship. I'm hitting the over here.
Yeah.
Even if maybe they go 10-2 and make it to the playoffs, I kind of see that as like, I'm not gonna say worst case scenario, but like, I think that's very likely, and then they just roll and win the Natty. But I could also see a world where they go 11-1 here.
Yeah.
I'm just really high on this roster, so I'm gonna take
I mean,
the
they
over.
have 11 top 200 players according to PFF going into the 2026 NFL draft right now. So that is the most out of any team we saw. I think the second most was 9, and that was a couple teams in the Big
Sure.
Ten and some in the
Sure.
SEC. So it's a very talented roster.
I think there's a way to say that they could go 8-4, hell, even 7-5, but I just don't think they will. I don't think DeBoer will allow that to happen. I think they'll go 10-2, so hit the over. I don't know if they'll be in the SEC championship game, but I do think we're going to have like 3 or 4 2-loss SEC teams, and so it will come down to a tiebreaker there for me. But I would have them hitting the over. I think they're going to be in the playoff too. 10-2 SEC team would be in the playoff anyway, but I've got them hitting the over.
I, as a Alabama hater, to make up for my past mistakes, I'm going to take the under.
Wow.
I would be interested in that Florida State game, how that starts out. Does Florida State click? Do the transfers click like they did 2 years ago, or do we see it again like last year? At Georgia, I think, would y'all say y'all would pick Georgia to win that game over Alabama in Athens?
I mean, it's just I may be one of the highest people in Alabama in the country.
That's fair.
I'll go back to the Florida State game real quick. I think it's very unlikely that Florida State, with all those transfers, are that ready to roll week 1 against a team returning this much production and cohesion.
Yeah.
I don't really think that's going to be that much of a game.
That's fair.
They very well could lose. No matter how good of a team you have, you're going to Georgia. You're probably not going to be favored in that game.
Yeah. I'm taking the under. I've got them with 3 losses. They're still talking about Milroe in the chat, which is cracking me up.
He was a very divisive quarterback, that's for sure, and we're seeing it on display in the chat.
That was kind of what I was trying to get to. Maybe I don't know.
No, I mean, you...
See, Sven, I just want to say this real quick. You say that fact is Simpson will be an upgrade over Milroe. We don't know. We haven't seen Ty Simpson play college football enough to know for certain he's going to be an upgrade over Milroe.
He knows.
Fair.
Like, I know Geno is better than Justin Herbert.
And
Sure.
Shedeur Sanders is going to be the next Tom Brady.
He could be.
He could be.
You can't
He
say
could
he's
be.
not.
He's not yet, or he's
The
not
fact
not
is,
yet.
the actual fact is, we're talking about college football, so no one knows anything.
Facts.
And
Ty
anything
Simpson
can
could be
happen.
downright terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bet on that.
He also
but
could be the next Tua Tagovailoa.